The Anunnaki, based on the descriptions in the Sumerian tablets, which Sitchin brings forth, is when they refer to Enki, is that they describe him being tall, having the hair the color of the sun, and the eyes the color of the sky. So I guess he was, and he was light-skinned. So maybe the Nordics are closer to the Anunnaki than anyone else.
Now, you kind of hinted that they may still be around.
Well, there's
What
no doubt that the Anunnaki left behind their offspring. And there's definitely a huge global movement with Marduk, Enki's, one of Enki's sons, that was in charge. It seems like he was in charge of Egypt for a long time and various parts of that part of the world. And Marduk was left behind to look after this planet and did not necessarily do the kind of job that he was expected to do.
He didn't do a good job.
No, and so there are these two factions of the Anunnaki, those that left behind, that retained a lower level of consciousness and took the world in a very different, draconian kind of suppressive and oppressive direction that we are experiencing on this earth today, with absolute control through governments and oppression. And those that left, the higher consciousness Anunnaki, that allowed themselves to grow in consciousness. They are beings as well. Thousands and thousands of years have gone by. Their consciousness has exploded as well. And so now we have the higher consciousness Anunnaki and the low consciousness Anunnaki. And I believe those that left, being Enlil and Enki, are very active from a much higher dimension to restore the problems that have been caused by their offspring on this planet.
Well, they say that the Anunnaki that they were a warring group, that they attacked each other, and look what kind of folks we are on this planet. We're doing the same thing.
I think it gets even more complicated than that, because the Anunnaki were not the only ETs that were active on this planet. There were many, many others.
The Greys that we've heard.
The Greys, the Zeta Reticuli, the many others. And there are many researchers that speak about that aspect of it. And we need to take cognizance of that and see how the Anunnaki's activities here compares to the other interventions and activities of extraterrestrials. But it seems that the Anunnaki were the very powerful and I guess dominant ETs here, because of the giant gold mining operation that they created, and the fact that they were in this planet for minerals. And then they were joined by other ETs that came to this planet for more minerals.
Sure,
and
but they were the first?
It seems like it. At this stage, it seems like it.
Well, it's amazing how the book of Genesis kind of echoes this story if you look for that story.
Yeah. And what I find fascinating is when you read Genesis, and I come back to the gold, where you find it's very obvious that it's not humans that were obsessed with the gold, but it's the Anunnaki or the Elohim, because the Anunnaki also refer to themselves as the Elohim. This is critical to understand. And it is the Elohim in the Bible that first mentioned the word gold, not the humans. It's in Genesis.
Powdered gold too, right?
Yeah, but the word gold first comes to us from God, or the Elohim, in Genesis 2, when Eve had not yet been fashioned from Adam's rib. Adam was still alone on earth, and it's God that mentions the word gold. When he says there's a land called Havilah, there's great water, and the land is good, the water is good, and there is gold. And in there we find the clues that the Elohim were obsessed with gold and not the humans.
They used gold also in a powdered form, and they ingested it. What did it do to them?
Well, we know from the great works of people like David Hudson and other researchers, Lawrence Gardner, that speak about the white powder of gold, or the monoatomic gold, or the Bible refers to it as manna from heaven. And they seem to have used it as a curative substance to keep them healthy, to keep them physically immortal. It has numerous properties. It's a superconductor, so if you ingest it, basically what it does, it helps the circuits inside your body. Your nervous system becomes a superconductor then, so that you no longer have to take milliseconds for the information to travel, but it travels instantly throughout your body. So your DNA gets healed by it. You can cure disease with it. Plus, it levitates. And
it levitates?
It levitates, you know, the white powder of gold levitates. David Hudson talks about when they were doing the laboratory experiments with MIT, when they had a little powder, fluffy powder in the tube of inert gas, when he brought his hand under it, a little pile of powder lifted up and levitates.
Huh.
So what that suggests that we actually have monoatomic elements in our bodies, because when you bring your hand above it, below it, it repels it. While a magnet, when you put a magnet there, it does nothing. They tried all kinds of things, bring under the white powder of gold. Only the human body would make it respond. So, and it's also interesting that it's the gold, because gold is not the only element that can be turned into monoatomic element. From the group of elements that do that, there are about 9 or 11 of them, if I remember. Platinum group of metals,
sure.
yeah. But it's gold that seems to flux at body temperature. That's why they were interested in the gold alone and not the other, not platinum or iridium or rubidium and so forth. The gold is the one they were looking after. And that is critical as well, because in South Africa, in the province of Limpopo, there are dozens and dozens of underground tunnels, ancient gold mining tunnels that were mined by the Anunnaki, because there's no other explanation for it. They're ancient. They were discovered in the 30s by modern gold miners. And in these tunnels, there's no gold, but there is platinum slag that's been left behind in these tunnels. So they weren't interested in the platinum, they were interested in the gold.
Tell me about these stone circle ruins that you've looked into.
Yeah, and that is, so glad you came back to that, because that is the thing that explains a lot about the Anunnaki, Enki, and this vast gold mining empire. Because the stone circles, first of all, there are more than 10 million of these circular stone ruins.
Everywhere?
They're all over South Africa, Zimbabwe, parts of Botswana, Mozambique, and I believe they cross over the Zambezi into southern Zambia as well. And they are what is best described as the factory that powered, and the factory and the power plant that was the giant gold mining empire of the Anunnaki. And all the stone circles are circular. Each one has a very unique design, because each one of them is an energy generating device. And I know this because we measured them. They create huge amounts of sound frequencies in the gigahertz, which is unheard of.
Were they built in these locations for a specific reason?
Yes, they were built on specific locations because they actually suck out the sound frequency, the sound energy of Gaia. And that's why each one is unique, because each one of the stone circles is a cymatic representation of the sound frequency on the surface of planet Earth. So it becomes like an energetic plug point into the Earth. And then they share the energy that they amplify because of the sound frequencies that these stone walls then amplify and generate electromagnetic fields out of the sound. So sound becomes a precursor to electromagnetic fields. And then they share this energy by these channels that connect all the stone circles together. So you got more than 10 million stone circles that I found or calculated that cover most of southern Africa. They're all connected by these channels. And they create this huge power plant that created the energy for the extraction of the gold, the technology that they use to extract the gold from the tunnels, and for the processing of the gold and the separation of the minerals and whatever they needed to do.
How did we lose this information, this knowledge?
Well, the flood, as we discussed already.
Wiped out everything?
The flood wiped it out. That seems to be a very important dividing line in human history, in recent human history.
And do you think that flood was generated on purpose, as the Bible dictates?
I don't think so.
Just a catastrophe?
I think it was a catastrophe, and the Anunnaki knew it was coming, and they prepared for it. And I also know they prepared for it because we have technology that has detected many, many tunnels that lie hidden below the soil.
Okay.
That technology exists. And we know that where those tunnels are, and we also know that those tunnels are still filled with gold. And that is a huge discovery.
What do you think? They saw an asteroid coming this way? And
well, either an asteroid
predicted where it was going to hit?
Yeah, either an asteroid or, as Sitchin suggests, that their planet or one of their moons was coming very close to planet Earth, and they knew that it was going to cause huge geophysical effects. And so the Anunnaki prepared for it. They hid all the gold in the tunnels underground, and many people would have then gone into the tunnels underground to try and hide from the flood.
And they got wiped out.
They got wiped out. So we found lots of tunnels that are filled with bones, human remains, and filled with gold. And there are thousands of them.
And they could be that old.
They definitely go back to about 12,000 years. In fact, there's one grave site that is very close to Adam's calendar that we are convinced is actually the grave site of Enki's youngest son, called Dumuzi. And the Sumerian tablets very clearly tell the story of Inanna and Dumuzi. And when Dumuzi died after the flood, so that's recent, that's like 12,000 years ago, right? And Inanna took him to the deep Abzu, where she buried him on the edge of a cliff near his father's special place, looking east, so that his soul would be everlasting. And there's a grave right there that we've detected with infrared technology, that there's a cavity about 3 meters deep and about 3 meters long. Now, a human grave would not be 3 meters long, it would be a lot shorter. And it's been confirmed by Baba Credo Mutwa, the preeminent Zulu shaman in South Africa, who said that there is an ancient king buried at that site. And that ancient ceremonies were performed there by shamans and elders for thousands of years at this site. It's what we call the stone altar, which was discovered by Johann Heine and myself. And that is connected to Adam's calendar, or which is Enki's calendar, built by Enki, which actually is a giant vortex. It's a double toroid vortex.
So when this group came here, the Anunnaki, how long ago?
Well, Sitchin calculated about 435 to 450,000 years ago.
Okay.
And my research shows that the tools and the artifacts and the origins of humankind, the furthest I can take it back is around 285,000 years ago, which is an interesting number.
Absolutely.
As you know, because of the mitochondrial Eve studies, suggest that humanity suddenly sprung up out of nowhere around 250 to 300,000 years ago.
Just going like that. And boom.
So it's still consistent. The tools and artifacts, and especially Adam's calendar, which is one of the places that we found in South Africa, which is connected to the Anunnaki and specifically Enki, that shows that was established about 285,000 years ago.
Okay, so they come here to mine gold, and all of a sudden, the beings, the inhabitants who come here, they don't want to do the work anymore, do they?
That's it.
So somebody comes up with a grand idea. Hey, the species that happened to be on this planet at the time, what were they? Neanderthals or
good question.
Who knows?
Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Neanderthal. They could have been
not human, though.
Not human. Not the way that we see humans today.
So they decide, let's genetically alter this species and create us in their image. Sounds like the Bible, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
And is that what they do?
That's what Sitchin's translations are all about, and not just his translations. There are various other translations, and it's important to note that not everything Sitchin wrote was true and accurate. He made mistakes, like we all do.
Sure.
But now it's for us to identify and recognize those and replace them with new information. So that's exactly what seems to have happened. Some sort of genetic meddling happened, genetic experimentation happened. That these
to make workers.
To make workers. They were masters. This is one thing that we need to specify. They were masters of technology and masters of genetic manipulation. And they seem to continue having that mastery today. And so they created this.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Adam and the Eve, Genesis, talking about the first man and woman, they really were the Adam and Eve of this genetic manipulation.
Absolutely. But my information is, and based on what I found in South Africa, is that the first beings that were cloned they were neither male nor female. They were probably more male because they were larger and more masculine in shape, but they did not yet have the X or Y chromosomes. So the first humans cloned by the Anunnaki only had 22 pairs of chromosomes, which is an interesting number when you start dealing in numeric science, and many geneticists like William Brown suggest that originally we had only 22 pairs of chromosomes. And then when they realized that they needed the species, because they cloned the first humanoid to be a worker,
right.
Nothing else. Then they realized they couldn't clone enough of them fast enough.
They needed them to breed.
They
right?
needed them to breed. So that's when we suddenly see, several thousand years later, the introduction of the X and Y chromosomes, so that they could procreate. And that's when the biblical story comes into play, when they took the rib from Adam, and basically what they're telling us, they took a little bit of genetic material from Adam. Stem cells, exactly. And created a female. And
it's just an amazing story.
It is.
Now, but you're not saying there is not a God, because the interpretation of Genesis, fallen angels, we're really talking about these beings who came down here, aren't we?
What this very clearly highlights is that they are just another group of beings created by a much higher force.
Right.
What I refer
higher
to,
on the totem pole, basically.
Exactly. What I refer to as God with a big G, the creator of all, the source of all things.
Whatever it is.
Whatever that original source of consciousness is that has brought everything into creation, visible and invisible. We're just aspects of that. So what this does, what this information and this research does, it actually highlights how much bigger and greater the creator is.
I agree. It's one of the most fascinating stories.
And what's fascinating for me is the more research I do, and the more parts of Sitchin's work I revisit, the more we find specific places in South Africa that echo what he wrote about. So when Sitchin wrote these statements or these translations, he didn't know that we would discover them and find them. And that for me is critical in verifying and validating much of what he did, and now taking it to the next level and figuring out what were these people up to, who were they, and exposing the vastness of it at the southern tip of Africa.
Let's talk about Sitchin for a moment so people can have a better idea of what he did, what he uncovered, and how he found this.
Well, he talks about the Anuna gods, or the Anunnaki, the gods of heaven and earth, that came to earth a long time ago looking for gold. And this gold thing is critical because in all ancient cultures, you can't separate human origins and our obsession for gold. And we can trace it to, it's not actually a human obsession, it's actually an obsession of the gods, or the Anunnaki. And the establishment of this vast gold mining empire in this place called the Abzu. So if you try and reverse engineer this situation, trying to figure out where the Abzu is, if we can find the physical evidence and present a vast gold mining operation,
sure.
Then we can
ancient,
say,
and you can
ancient,
see it.
Exactly, with the tools and the artifacts, and add the technology to it, that's new technology to us today, that we don't yet understand, and realize that these ancients had this technology, that there are more than 10 million of these stone structures in southern Africa, and it's all about gold mining. Then I guess we found the Abzu that Zechariah Sitchin talks about, and the Abzu is where the gold mining was happening at the southern tip of Africa.
What were they looking for gold for? Were they greedy people and this was their wealth, or was there another reason?
Yeah, no. This is the critical thing that you start to discover when you start looking at how much we really know about ancient civilizations. The gold is not about wealth. It's not about trade and commerce. In fact, the Anunnaki were the ones as well that introduced the concept of money to the human race. Money is not part of a process of, barter and trade of thousands of years. There's a very specific time in human history that the Anunnaki introduced the concept of money. And that goes back thousands and thousands of years. The gold is all about a variety of things, and actually the more you look into it, the more mysterious it becomes. You know, we've heard about the fact that, as Sitchin writes, that they used the gold, they ground it up to a fine powder, and they suspended it around their planet to protect their planet against universal rays, cosmic rays.
Kind of like a layer.
Exactly. Yeah. Protective shield. Their planet was dying and so forth. Well, that may have been Sitchin's translation then, but if he knew what we know now about the various aspects of gold, he might have changed his opinion on the meaning of that translation. I believe that it played a far more important role in terms of the cladding of their planet. Because what the Anunnaki were doing here was pretty much going against what Star Trek has been calling for many, many decades now, the Prime Directive. And this is a very interesting, fine point. And I've been finding that this concept called the Prime Directive plays a critical role in human evolution and human development. And the Anunnaki juggled that Prime Directive ball very, very delicately. And I actually truly believe now, more than anything else, that the gold was used more as a cladding device to clad their planet, including planet Earth, with some sort of a shield that made our planet and their planet invisible to the prying eyes of other beings of consciousness. So they couldn't see what was going on this planet and the abuse that was happening of a species that was being created specifically for the mining of gold.
How much gold did they pull out of this planet?
We don't know how much gold has come out of there because there is no real record. Well, I guess there is a record, but we'll never see that record. Right. What I do know is that once the gold leaves the gold mines of South Africa and has been paid for by the South African Reserve Bank with fiat money, right,
which means money that nothing is backing, right?
Yes, exactly. Basically pieces of paper that they take and
just
print some logos on it and say, well, here, we've paid you for the gold.
We need to get into that business.
Oh, yeah. So which means that basically stealing our resources from the people and paying for it with pieces of paper. Once the gold leaves the mines, we can't trace it. Exactly. It disappears. It goes into the Rand refinery in South Africa, and then from there, we have no idea what happens to it.
Is there anything out there that you would love an instant answer for right now?
Millions of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the list is endless.
What's the one question, if you could get answered?
The one question is probably would be to give us visible signs of the help that we are getting from the beings of higher consciousness, the infinite number of beings of higher consciousness, because many people are aware that something's happening, that there's intervention on a very, very high level and on a very massive scale that's happening consciously to save this planet and move it into a path of ascension into higher consciousness and saving humanity from its enslavement, to get answers that this is really going on a physical and tangible level, so people can get the relief that something is going on, and also help them believe that there's something, that it's not just us that has to work at this, that we actually are getting help from others. But in the end, we have to do the work. We've got to do the talking and do the legwork and do the conscious work on this planet. We've got to be the seeds of consciousness. We can't just rely on the help from outside.
Well, and with all this, are you convinced that we are just occupying this shell of a body to get to the other side and learn something else?
In some ways, yes, but I also believe that what many people refer to as karma on this planet is not necessarily what we understand it to be. I have a belief that the karma that we experience on this planet is actually a karmic trap that was created, probably by the Anunnaki and then reinforced by other beings who try to enslave humanity on this planet. While karma is probably an aspect of free will in the rest of the universe, where you can choose karmically to reincarnate based on your free will, but then you reincarnate with full knowledge of your past lives, being fully conscious of what's going on. That is not the case here. When people reincarnate on planet Earth, they reincarnate, most of us reincarnate not knowing anything. Sure. We're like infants. So that is what I refer to as the karmic trap. Until you grow in consciousness through many lives, sometimes thousands of lives, reaching levels of enlightenment where you realize, come to the conclusion that you're enslaved here, that you no longer have to come back to repeat this enslavement pattern, that you can release yourself from this enslavement.
How did you get interested in ancient civilizations?
It's a good question, because I don't actually even remember myself. I've always been, since the earliest of times in my life, even as a 5-year-old, I used to go outside and look at the sky and say, when are they going to start talking to us? and then by the time I turned 18 and I read Erich von Däniken, Chariots of the Gods, yeah. That I think was really the key moment in my life that everything changed for me.
Super. Zecharia Sitchin, of course, his theory was that there was a civilization that came here, seeded us, basically created us, that they were the gods. You've looked into that theory too, and you agree with him.
Not only do I agree with him, I think that I'm in a very fortunate position in the work and the research I've been doing, is to finally provide the physical evidence for what Zecharia Sitchin has written about.
Right. Let's take some questions from you for our guest, Michael Tellinger. Just raise your hand and I'll point to you. Yes, right over here.
Why don't we hear more about the civilizations in South Africa, the research that's being done there?
Mainly because it flies in the face of mainstream history and archaeology. And I'm, at this stage, I seem to be the sort of lone voice that talks about this. You will hear a lot of stories and information about ancient civilizations from in mainstream history books, but they regurgitate the same information over and over again, and it generally stops at a certain time in history. You know, what I talk about is a much longer history and this previously unknown history, the vanished civilizations of Southern Africa that I've been exposing.
These lost civilizations that you have looked into, what happened to them? And why did we lose the knowledge of what happened to them?
And this is a great story and an important question, because what this does, again, it brings together the one historic event that virtually all ancient cultures talk about. And that seems to be this great flood that happened.
We call it the flood of Noah.
Exactly.
Right?
And the Sumerian tablets talk about it, the Bible talks about it. Every ancient civilization has a great flood that came at some stage and wiped the slate clean. And the evidence suggests that that's exactly what happened in South Africa and Southern Africa, based on the sedimentation and the fact that majority of the stone ruins are still buried by many meters of soil and sediment, and specifically sea sand.
Sounds like a tsunami to me, Michael.
Well, it's a huge... It must have been huge waves, because we find sea fossils, seashells, sea sand, right, on tops of mountains inside the stone ruins.
On tops of mountains.
On tops
so the water
of mountains.
Had to get up that high, obviously.
That high. And also down in the Barberton Valley, where Adam's calendar looks out over the Barberton Valley, there's about 15 or more meters of sediment of sea sand.
That's dramatic. How about another question for Michael Tellinger? Yes, sir.
Hi, Michael. You do a lot of research on the stone circles in South Africa. I was wondering if you found any evidence of pyramids in South Africa.
Thank you for that question. Definitely. Pyramids seem to be a common denominator all over the planet, and more pyramids are being found everywhere. And there definitely are two distinct pyramidal structures that are connected to Adam's calendar that lie in the Barberton Valley that I just mentioned, that is filled with sediment of sea sand. We have no definite proof that they are pyramids yet, but they certainly look like pyramids. They are connected to Adam's calendar via a golden spiral, which, you know, the probability that they are not connected can be now assumed that they are connected. And they display the same strange phenomenon at these pyramidal structures, that you lose GPS signal when you go in there, just like you do at Adam's calendar and in many of the stone circles that you go into, because they are all energy generating devices. And that is one of the key discoveries that I've made. So they are strange pyramidal structures. You lose GPS, they emanate strange energies, sound and electromagnetic frequencies that come out of them. And also they align with the rise of Orion's belt from the viewpoint when you stand at Adam's calendar, the pyramidal structures.
Michael, Zechariah Sitchin talked about the Anunnaki, that they came from another planet within our own solar system, Nibiru.
Yeah.
Where is that planet now?
Good question. Everyone's asking that question, and I wish we had more definite answers for that. Whether Nibiru was a planet or a whole other solar system, I think is still out. The jury is out on that. Just recently, there was several years ago, there was this strange planet or a star with several planets around it. It was either a star with planets or a planet with moons that was moving towards us, and that suddenly vanished. It's no longer there.
Where'd it go?
Exactly. Now, the cladding effect that I referred to of the gold, and this is what gold has, the monoatomic form of gold, the white powder of gold, has this capacity to make things disappear.
Cloaking.
Cloaking it. So you cannot detect it energetically, and I believe the Anunnaki understood this they're masters of technology. In fact, all the technology we have today probably is a hangover from the Anunnaki.
Let's take another question for Michael Tellinger. Who's got one? As we talk about ancient civilizations. You.
I was wondering if you had any idea what the Anunnaki look like.
Well,
I love this question.
I know, it's a tough one.
It comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Many have said that they look like us because we are in their image.
Right. And I would have to concur with that. But unfortunately, the human race does not all look the same. We're not actually the human race. We're the human races. And there are many race groups among human beings. And that's a critical question.
How many planets do you think the Anunnaki went to do exactly what they did here?
Hundreds, if not thousands. They've been doing this for millions and millions of years. So it's difficult to judge and pick a number.
They just seeded all these planets.
Yeah. And, but the important thing here is that there's often a very fine line between the Elohim and the Anunnaki, a line of deception. And again, and I need to quickly come back to the brilliant discovery of Micheal Ledwith when he discovered that the opening phrase of the Bible is not what we've been taught it is. Because the opening Hebrew phrase does not have the letter Aleph at the beginning of that phrase. And when he inserted the letter Aleph which is an obligatory letter to every script, sacred script has to start with the first letter of the alphabet. When he inserted that letter, it no longer says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, which we all have come to know.
Sure.
It says, the Father of the beginnings created the Elohim, the heavens and the earth. And that's a spectacular discovery because it immediately brings Judeo-Christianity in alignment with all ancient cultures and the creation stories from all ancient cultures, that there was some sort of a primordial source, the Father of the beginnings.
It makes a lot of sense.
That brought forth the Elohim themselves, the gods of the Bible, and everything else in creation.
Let's take some more questions for Michael Tellinger. How about somebody over here? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Michael. Do you think Stonehenge in England is attached to the circles in South Africa at all?
Is the Stonehenge in England attached to the circles in South Africa?
That's interesting. Maybe, huh?
Yeah, it's definitely, what I can tell you, Stonehenge is an energy generating device. There's no doubt about that. The technology that seems to be embedded in it is very similar to that of the stone circles in South Africa. So there's most likely a connection. The Anunnaki have been coming here for hundreds of thousands of years. The indication, however, is that Stonehenge is probably more than 1 million years old, based on the erosion on some of the stones in Stonehenge. And this is new information that nobody seems to be talking about. And yet when you go there and you look at the stones at Stonehenge, and you look at the erosion, it's like 2 feet of erosion on Sarsen stone where some of the breaks occurred. And you go, well, hold on. 2 feet of erosion can't occur in a few thousand years. So Stonehenge must be extremely old, probably way more than 1 million years old. You know, and remember that Stonehenge was reconstructed in the 50s. So it's not the way it was found. When it was found, it was totally destroyed and just lying there in pieces. It was reconstructed in the 50s into what we see it being today. So it's difficult to say, but it's possibly connected, yeah.
You know, it fascinates me. We've got records of events during our lifetime, right? The Civil War, World War I, II, anything that happened, we have records. We can go back, we can trace it. What happened with the ancient civilizations where it just seems to have ended and nothing got passed along? And then here we are scrambling to try to interpret what happened in the past. I mean, how did it get and why did it get cut off?
Well, we got the Sumerian tablets. We got ancient Indian and Asian Sanskrit and other ancient texts that tell us very similar stories about the gods that came
and
to
about
Earth.
flying machines and
Exactly.
everything else.
And the gold, the obsession with gold. So there are a lot of consistencies in ancient times that are becoming more and more important as we connect the dots. But there's another important thing about the technology, because if you look at what all the ancient sites are made of, they're made of stone. Well, one of the main components of stone is silica, quartz.
Right.
What is used in the most advanced technology today? Quartz, silica. It holds memory, it conducts information, fiber optics, silicon chips, and so forth. The most advanced technology is silica. And so if we know how to use silica in its original form in the stone, why the hell do we need to extract it?
Yeah.
Just use it in the stones. And that's what I believe many people are starting to realize, is that all the information is encoded in the stone. You don't need to extract it to put it into, shiny metal objects. That's an aspect of capitalism. You need to extract it, put it into a thing, and package it nicely so you can sell it to somebody. If you don't need to sell anything, you don't need to extract it. Leave it in its original form.
Great information. Michael, what's your website for people who want to track you and see some of the things you're doing?
Yes, michaeltellinger.com. Very simple. Michael.
And your books are available all over the place?
Yeah, they're available at the bookstores in the United States and on Amazon. And
well, you do a great job. Your research is so important, and this civilization needs more people like you.
Well, thank you, George, and thanks for doing your show. Your show needs to be heard by millions.
Throughout all of mankind, we have always been trying to find these answers to these many questions. Who are we? Why are we here? And who the heck helped start us? Well, Michael, thank you for shedding a light into that.